Hello and welcome, friends. Welcome to another review of vintage fountain pens. This time I have for you four fountain pens, and I don't know much information about them, but judging by the way they look, I think that they were made in Germany between the 1930s and the 1950s. And I've gathered them in this special episode because they were not such expensive fountain pens. You will see that all of them, they don't have gold nibs. They have steel nibs or maybe gold plated nibs. And they didn't cost me lots of money. They cost me around 50 lays a piece, or 10.10 euros, or 11.08 American dollars. Some of them, but some of them were given as bonuses or free fountain pens when I bought from the sellers some lots of fountain pens. And guys, let me start with the oldest one, or I believe is the oldest one, judging by the design of its body. And I believe that this one is the oldest one of the bunch. What is interesting about this fountain pen? We have a clue, the Luna fountain pen. If you watch my channel, you will probably know that the Luna is a sub-brand of St. Stadler. Luna and Mars, the Roman god of war Mars, are two sub-brands of St. Stadler fountain pen producer. Nowadays, St. Stadler is best known for its pencils. It's a well-known producer of pencils, but they still have the Luna brand on some of their colored pencils for children. This fountain pen could be a Franken fountain pen, in the sense that maybe this cap was taken from another fountain pen. This cap has a design of the 1930s Germany, in the sense that we have a celluloid body, we have two rings at the end of the body, we have this interesting looking clip which is branded and engraved with Luna, and we have this flat ending done in another material. This is a little bit scratched, but this is hard rubber. And how do I know it's hard rubber? Because in time it develops this brown patina in comparison with the celluloid that remains relatively the same. So nice trims. I believe they were gold plated. Now let's move on to the other part of the fountain pen. And it's interesting that the other part of the fountain pen, it seems to be also from the 1930s. We have here celluloid, here you probably guessed it, hard rubber, and here we have the end of the piston. It certainly had some damage in the past, but I believe it was repaired as good as they could. This is a blind cap, guys, and it reveals the piston filler, so quite nice. The blind cap, we can see it all the way from the late 1930s to the 1940s and well into the 1950s. Usually it had some engravings here telling us the name of the model, or maybe on the blind cap the nib, but in this particular case we don't see those engravings. The cap unscrews like this, and interesting, it reveals an ink window, where when we see this ink window we definitely can see some injected plastic. So here celluloid, this injected plastic, so This tells us that the body is from the 1950s in my point of view. We have this grip section, quite not in a good shape. We can see a crack over there. And what is quite strange, we have this nib. So if you watch my channel, you probably have seen this nib before. It is a bear on two legs, and I presume that this is a steel nib with this logo, was made in East Germany after 1955. So quite a strange combination. Maybe this is a Frankenpen. On the other side we have a strange looking feed. Judging by the way it looks, I think it's an ebonite feed, but quite strange. And judging by the length of the body of the fountain pen, definitely this nib is a replacement nib because it's quite small. So guys, for the writing sample, I will use this Faber-Castell pink ink. Due to the fact that not all the fountain pens were cleaned, maybe it will have different shades. Well, I will try to fill them with ink. First, I will leave the dimension, and I will call this the Franken Luna pen of the Franken Luna pen on the screen. And after that, we will do some writing samples. But I thought to myself that we can leave the writing samples at the end of the video, and let me present the other fountain pens to you before we will move on to the writing sample. The next one is also in the shape of, let's say, 1930s and 1940s one. Although we have this cigar shape, these rounded endings, they still are a transitional model. So if we have a flat model in the 1930s like you'll see, and let's say that this is from the 1950s, you can see that this is a transitional model from the flat one to the domed one. So quite nice. A rather simple fountain pen made out all of celluloid, and with only this clip being a metallic clip. And what does this tell us, guys? This could be from the Second World War, so it's a war production. And if we turn the body, we can see here an ink window, but this time is not so clear as the other ink window that we saw on this model. So this is from the 1950s, I believe, injected plastic, and this one is from the early 1950s, or maybe even from the 1940s. What we have here, guys, we have another piston filler, and I'm trying to rotate this to see if we have an integrating piston filler. No. Another blind cap here. And if we watch carefully, we have a personalization of the previous owner of this fountain pen. And we have scratched here WT. So I believe that those were the initial of the original owner of this fountain pen. This is fitted with quite a nice steel iridium point Bock nib, and this is a German nib. You can recognize it by this logo, which has a deer that jumps on the cliffs of a mountain. You can see, so this is a Bock nib. And on the back we have a rather crude looking feeder. It saw better days, and it looks like it was in contact with a heat source. So guys, this is the number 2 fountain pen. I will call it the WT fountain pen fitted with the Bock nib, and I will leave its dimensions on the screen. Okay, let me put it aside here. Now let's continue with another fountain pen. And this time, guys, I presume that we don't have its original cap. You can see that the ink window is visible right over here. And in my point of view, this should cover also the ink window. And you can see that when I place it right here, it barely covers those threads there. So no chance of securing it. I believe that this is a replacement cap. Of course, I'm not so sure about it being a replacement cap, but if we look at it quite carefully, we can see a metallic clip similar to a Kaweco clip, no engravings on it. We can see this ending, this dome shape ending to it, and again no visible threads. Only one little ring here, which is gold plated or at least of a gold color. If we look at the fountain pen, we can see an ink window, and again I believe that this is a piston filler with a blind cap. Let me see if this cap is blind, but it appears to be. No, this is an integrated piston, so the cap, it doesn't, you can't remove the ending. And if we turn it back, we can see that it returns to its original position. Another replacement nib, guys, and I say it's a replacement nib because I recognize that logo. This is a Senator nib. We have Iridium Point Germany engraved on it, and even the size of the nib, we have an M nib. This time another steel nib, gold plated. You can see that the gold plating has faded away around the tines. We don't have a bleeding hole, but we have that separating line that separates the two tines. At the back we have a feed. I'm not so sure it's ebonite or plastic, but judging by the way it looks and by the nib, this could be the plastic feed of that nib. I believe that this nib, it is from the 1970s or the 1980s, so it is a modern nib, but placed on a fountain pen that I believe is from the late 40s or maybe from the 1950s. I will also leave the nib, the dimension of this fountain pen on the screen, and I will call it the Franken Senator fountain pen. And now the last of them, which I believe, judging by the design of its body or of this cap, is from the late 1950s. We can see that the cap is not fitted with a clip, and if we zoom on it, I believe it was never fitted with a clip. I'm not so sure about that, but it seems that it has no marks indicating the lack of a clip. It has only this band ring, and it has two breathing holes, or just one here, and yes, I think only one breathing hole. If we unscrew the cap, it reveals this plastic injected ink window, so again from the 1950s. It has this grip section which ends in the concave form specific to German fountain pens, and it has a nice looking nib. On it we have imprinted Rostfrei 24. Rostfrei, it means without rust in German. A nice large breathing hole in the shape of a heart, and the ending. I'm not so sure we have an iridium tipping on this particular nib. At the back of it we can see we have an original feeder, an ebonite feeder, which I believe it is original to this fountain pen. I'm not so sure about the nib, and again, I'm not so sure about the producer of this fountain pen. I only know it's a piston filler, again with a blind cap, and no other clues to its origin. So I will call this the Roast Fry 24 fountain pen, and I will leave its dimensions on the screen. Now we are ready for the writing sample. And for the writing sample, I thought to myself that it should be interesting to make a single session with all of them. So first I will try to fill them all with ink. I hope that all the pistons are functional. In the case that we have a non-functional piston, we will test it by dipping its nib into the ink. So, before I will start the writing sample, let me change the angle of the camera, guys, for you to see better how they perform. And I think that this is a good angle. And now let me start with the first fountain pen. We have the Franken Luna fountain pen. So I will simply open the bottle of ink. Before I will open it, I will give it a little shake. I will put it here. Okay. Now I will remove the blind cap from the Luna fountain pen. And let me see if we can fill it up with ink. So first of all, let me do the drawing of ink. Let me see if it draws the ink, that cork. And it drew some quantity of ink, but I'm not so sure that it will stay on it inside of the reservoir. So you can see that a large amount of the ink was simply wasted. Okay, so let me put the blind cap on and let me try to do a writing sample. Let me see if we can cap it. Yes, it could be capped, but I will use it uncapped. So guys, the first one is the Luna Franken pen. Well, guys, I'm speechless. I thought that this nib, so look at this beautiful nib. I thought that this nib would scratch and would have some problems. But believe me, guys, when I tell you, this is one of the smoothest nibs that I ever tested in my life. It's so smooth that I'm quite blown up by it. So, Luna Franken pen. I will leave it like this, or maybe I will do another writing. So, Luna Franken pen. I believe that it was made in Germany, and I think it is fitted with a steel nib, no iridium tip, it seems, on it, made in East Germany, approximately after 1955. So let me leave this here because I want to tell you about the other fountain pen. So we'll talk about this fountain pen, the WT, fitted with that beautiful bock nib. As you can see, quite a large nib. Now I can see a detail to it, guys. So I believe that we have an oblique nib because one of the tines is smaller than the other one. I hope you can see here. I will call it an oblique medium one. We will see how it writes. I'm quite curious. So now guys, I will open this blind cap over here and try to see if I can fill it with ink. Okay, now I will turn the other way the piston, and I hope it drew enough ink. I will put back the blind cap over here, and before I will do the writing sample, let me see if we can post the cap on this fountain pen. Yes, we can post it, but I won't use it posted. So now let me give you a little zoom. Now we have the so-called WT, so these are the initials of the previous owner, WT with a bock nib fountain pen, also believe made in Germany, also a piston filler with a blind cap and an ink window. So this is definitely a steel nib, maybe an oblique medium, I'm not so sure. This is definitely a bock nib, judging by the logo. So this is the way it writes, guys. Let me put it aside and let's take the other fountain pen, the so-called Franken pen, with the modern nib from Senator. This has an integrated piston, so I will simply turn it one way, and after that I will turn it the other way and hope it will draw ink. So yes, I've managed to do it. Let me see how it writes. So this is the so-called Senator Franken pen, made also in Germany. Another piston filler, this time without a blind cap but with an integrated piston at the back of it. This has a steel nib, but it's gold plated. It has an iridium tip. The size of it is M for medium, and I know for sure this is a modern nib made by Senator. Okay guys, this is the way it writes. And now the last one of them. So this is the so-called roast fry fountain pen. Again, let me see if the piston is functional. Yes, I'm not so sure it will draw ink, but we will see in a moment. So I will put it like this, and now I will turn the piston knob in the other way. And unfortunately guys, this doesn't draw the ink, which means that cork needs to be replaced, but we will see if we can write with it like it is. So like this. I will put back here this cap. Maybe I will use it with the cap because it's quite a small fountain pen. So again, this is a roast fry. No, I need to dip it again. Let me see. So a roast fry, it doesn't want to work. Let me dip it again because it is a shame. I wanted to see how this nib, this interesting looking nib writes. So I will leave it a little bit. I will remove the excess of the ink. So I will try again. So a roast fry. No, unfortunately guys, I can't show you how it writes. Not like this anyway. So again, let me see. Roast, fry. No, unfortunately on this fountain pen we won't have a writing sample. Unfortunately it scratches a little bit and it definitely has some ink flow problems. So this was it with this, but I will certainly continue with the Senator Franken fountain pen. So let me see the Senator Franken fountain pen, how juicy it is. Let me put it here. You can see the different shades because they weren't proper clean, so you can see quite a nice juicy one. Let me see if we have some flex to it. No flex. Let me see. Little fountain pen, guys. No line variance, no line variance. Okay, let me see if we can do a signature with it. Quite nice. And let me see if we can reverse write with it. Reverse writing. Definitely a possibility, but it writes approximately the same. So again, an M for a medium in reverse writing. So this was it, guys. Of course, I will tell you about the Fox in the next session. And now let's do this WT Bock nib. Again, you can see it is quite clear, the ink window, so I don't think it drew a lot of ink. Maybe I will dip it a little bit in ink before I will start seeing what it can do. So let's start with a little bit of line variance, and oh, I'm sorry, now I have too much ink. Let me see if I can remove the excess. Yes. And now let me continue. It seems to have a little flex, so just a little bit. Let me zoom, guys, for you to see if we have some movement of the tines. And you can see, yes, we definitely have some move on the tines. So let's call it with a little flex. This has a little flex. So little flex. Now let's see again next if we have some line variance. So here no pressure, and here pressure. Definitely no line variance. And I'm sorry, guys, I have to put it like this. And now I will test it here to see how juicy this nib is. And we can see that tine, that difference with the tines, which makes it like an oblique medium one. Quite a juicy, like you see. Now I'm curious to see how it does signature, but judging by the fact that it's quite a wet nib, you can see a nice little signature there. And I'm curious to see if we can reverse write with it. Reverse writing. So I believe a no, because it scratches a little bit. So this was the second nib. This is the Bock nib. And now let's return to the first nib, which is from this Franken Luna fountain pen. And again, it lost a lot of ink, so I will dip it again in ink. Another non-functioning piston. Okay, so the Luna, I will do it right here. So let's start with the flexiness test. Let's see. Although smooth, it doesn't have flex, no flex to it. Now let me see if we have some line variance. Here no pressure, and here a little bit of pressure. No line variance. Now let me see how juicy it is. It seems to be quite juicy. Yes, as you can see. I'm not so sure, but I will call it a fine nib. It writes quite nice, but it's a smooth writer. I'm quite impressed of it. Now let me see if this smooth writer is a good signature. Yes, quite a nice signature. And let's see if it can reverse write. Reverse writing. No, it definitely wasn't intended to reverse write. It definitely scratches, so no reverse writing capability. And if I'm on it, let me tell you about the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So it writes quite smooth, and maybe a little bit of a scratchiness here. I'm not so sure if it's from the reverse writing, but definitely a smooth nib, and I'm quite impressed. A nice surprise, this little East German all steel nib. Okay, so this was my review of the Frankel Luna fountain pen. I will put it aside here. Now we will continue with the WT fountain pen fitted with the Bock nib. Again, we will do a little bit of dipping, remove the excess of ink, and now let me see. So the quick, I'm sorry, I'm not so sure if you can see it. Let me zoom, maybe you can see it. We have a little bit of, yes, you can see that little bit. Now, yes, now we are clear, and it should write fine. So the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So guys, what a beautiful Bock nib could do with an iridium tip, a wonderful oblique medium, I should call it, nib. It is simply a great nib. Okay, let me put this aside, and now we reach the last one, and it is this one. So the modern Senator nib. Now let me see. So the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So in my opinion, the best nib is this Bock nib over here. The next one is the East German nib from the 1950s, the all steel nib without a iridium tip. And the last one is this modern Senator nib, which performs good but not so good as the others. So guys, this was my review of let's say some Franken German fountain pens. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I'm sorry it took so long, but I needed to be fair on all of them. They are all old fountain pens, starting with this Luna from the 1930s and all the way through 1950s. If only we can tell their history. Think about it, guys, how many hands these fountain pens exchanged. Maybe they saw the years of the Second World War. You'll never know about the provenance of these fountain pens, but they find their way to my collection, and they will be carefully cleaned and preserved for the next generation. Thank you guys for your time. I hope you had enjoyable session watching this episode. I will see you again the next time. Till then, have a wonderful, wonderful day. So, have a nice day wherever you are, my friends. Please take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next episode. Till then, bye bye and God bless.